We have got to talk further about the Joseph Duggar situation involving Kendra Duggar's family and the legal side of things, the fact that they are booting them out of their house. We have got to talk more in depth about this. Once I've digested all of this information, I have so many things that I want to say about it. And the more I think about it, the more upset I am getting, and we need to go over this again today. So I would like to acknowledge this at the very beginning, that I am someone who does firmly believe that it is not okay to out the identity of a minor when it comes down to something like this, like what this child already went through when it comes down to her accusing Joseph Duggar of doing this, of bringing it to her family, of then having to go to law enforcement to talk about it in front of the officers, and all of the things that she's having to go through. Of course, we don't want to speculate on who this victim is, and in every situation, I would completely agree to just not discuss it at all. But when it comes down to the Duggars' predatory behavior and their disturbing decisions when it's come to what this victim is going through, it's hard to keep the identity completely private, because so much of what is currently going on is pointing to who it was. And if you have a brain and you're looking into this case, you don't have to dig too deep to know who the victim is. And it's not speculation at this point, because the father made a GoFundMe where it was a statement in itself to me that they are having to find a home. They're out homeless, looking for a home, and having to also fight this legal battle. Okay, that to me is saying they don't care that it is aware that everyone knows that he did this to his own sister-in-law. This is not a speculative thing at this point. This is something that ties in heavily to this case and this situation. It ties in heavily because it shows you a pattern of behavior with the Duggar family, and how there will be victims of this egregious behavior in their own family. And what do? They make the girls in the family pay for coming out and talking about it. And then they protect and coddle the predators in this family. And it is such a big portion of this that there's no way to cover this case without talking about this. And this child is already going through so much trauma in the fact that she is going to have to stand in front of a jury and recount what happened to her and talk about that trauma over and over and over again in front of the person who did this to her. That to this child is going to be harder on her than anybody on social media trying to hold these predators accountable for what they have done. And at this point, the entire Duggar clan has become a predator, because they have preyed on the weak in these situations, and they have forced these children to feel accountable for coming out about something that they didn't have any control of to begin with. And that absolutely infuriates me. And there's just no way to talk about this case without talking about it. This victim is a minor still to this day, and she's about to have to go through something that no child should have to go through, that is going to be so scary for her. And the reason why I'm talking about this in the manner that I have is because it matters so much that what this family is doing to this victim at this time is that they are punishing her for talking about what happened to her. And this happens to victims of abuse so often, and especially in these cults, because they're so afraid of the men having to have any repercussions for their decisions, because there's then going to be a domino effect of every predator man that thought he could pray away his problems from day one. And they don't want that domino effect, because there's so many in these cults, because these cults thrive on protecting the predators. And that's one of the reasons why they exist, is because it's given these men who've made these terrible actions power and control to continue to do these things. It's given them control over how women dress, over what women can say, over what women can do. And then it's given them control over how they're forgiven for it whenever they act on their own thoughts and feelings by blaming it on the girls. Your hair's an inch too long. Your skirt's an inch too short. You blinked at me or winked at me, because in this IBLP cult that the Duggars follow, that they believe that winking is bad, that your eyes are causing men to sin. So in this situation with Kendra Duggar's family, they're going to blame the child for what happened. They're going to say that the child did something that tempted him. That's how they're going to cover this up. They're going to blame the child, and that's how they do it in these cults. Or even blame the family. Maybe they didn't have her dressed appropriately, or maybe the parents should have done this, or the child shouldn't have done this. When you go back and you listen to these calls that I've been covering over on this channel, they believe that he was following lies. Now, what people in these cults believe is they believe lies are from the devil. The devil is Satan. And so they believe that the devil is causing these men to sin by feeding their head full of all of these tempting thoughts, and that they're not actually their own thoughts. What this does is this takes control over the man and his decisions completely away from him. It makes it so that he's not in control over what he did, that the devil made him do this thing. So he's not actually at fault for it. It was the devil. So what does he need to do? He needs to not fall into temptation. He needs to read more of the Bible. He needs to go to church more. He needs to keep his head focused on the Lord, and then those things won't happen again. That's the thing that's disturbing about these types of things, is that they're never going to hold the predator accountable for what he's done. It's always going to be that there were lies being told to him that tempted him to make these decisions by the devil. That is such a skewed and dangerous way of thinking, because it is not reality. It is not how the human brain works, and it is just factually wrong. Your actions are your actions alone. They are not some mystical, magical moonbeam ice cream power coming from someone else that convinced you to do these things. Like, these decisions are yours that you made on your own. And when there is no accountability in this situation, what do? They blame everybody else. It's not Joseph's fault. This case with Joseph has shown me the way that they were able to allow Josh to get away with the things that he's done, and continue to, even with the horrific material that he was looking at on his computers. They allowed him to get away with this because they view it as the devil convinced him to do it, and that this is not who Josh is. Even though he's repeated these actions time and time again with family, friends, with his sisters, with what he was looking at online, unfortunately, probably with his own children, because whenever these predators have children, they have access to a child at all times, 24/7. And these women are so uneducated that they're like, oh, that he wouldn't do anything because he's their dad. That is just, like, predators do not care who the kid is. They care if there's the opportunity, and then they will take it. They don't care if they only have 2 minutes or 30 seconds. They care that there's the opportunity, and they will take it, or they will look for it. And it just really stresses me out that these women are making these bad decisions, which is now making them as bad as the predators in the family, because nobody is holding them accountable. And now this entire Duggar clan, what they are doing is they are making the victims suffer for coming forward. They're teaching everyone in their family that if something happened to you and you talk about it, you're going to have to face the consequences of coming out about it. That's what they're teaching people. If any of the other Duggar kids have had to go through something, and they probably have because there's so many predators in their family, if any of them have had to go through something like this, they're going to see what the Caldwells are currently going through, and they're going to be scared to talk about it. They saw what their sisters went through whenever what came out about Josh came out, and their sisters had to do the interview with Megyn Kelly, and that whole thing happened. They're going to see the downfall of it and be scared of that to happen to them, that they're not going to come out about it. It is so dangerous what they have done. Now there is a victim out there who is seeing that her family is losing their home, and she is going to feel like it is because she talked about it. She's going to feel like it's because she told her family and then took it to the authorities that now my family's losing a house. Because when you're 14 years old, you bear the weight of the world on you. Whenever something goes wrong, if you feel like it started with you, you internalize that and feel the pressure and the weight of that. And I just hope that the Caldwells are taking good care of their child through this time, because this is going to be so difficult for her. And again, yes, we should never out a victim, but in this situation, because of the timeline of events where in the legal documents this happened on a family vacation, with the Caldwells being removed from their home and forced to find a home to live in when they don't even have the money to pay for the legal expenses, with them talking about how there's legal expenses, like we all know that it was one of Kendra's sisters. This makes me so infuriated with Kendra because not only is she not choosing her children, but she's not choosing her family either. She's not choosing the ones that brought her into this world. And of course, there could be so much more going on behind the scenes with them because, I mean, the pastor he's a pastor and they have their own things, you know. Some of them they, like, in my opinion, steal from the congregation because they convince them that they need to give them money or so that God will bless them and things like that. So there's definitely predatory behaviors that go on in some of these, if not all of these churches, for sure. But that's like a whole other topic that is separate from the situation. Like I've seen people on Reddit, they're talking about how like he needs to go find a job to provide for his own family and he shouldn't be online begging. And while I do completely agree with you that he needs to provide for his family, especially if you're going out there and creating 1,000 kids, you need to be able to provide for them and make sure that they're in a safe environment. I absolutely do agree with that. I also think that there's like a bigger situation at hand where they are being kicked out of their home and they have nowhere to live, and now the victim is going to feel responsible for what Joseph did. So those things can be true at the same time, where why are you continuing to have all these kids while living under the roof that the Duggars own? You know what I mean? I do agree that that's its own set of things for sure. I think that it is definitely worth talking about for sure. Like, why do you guys keep having all these kids when you cannot provide for them? Because you're making this decision. And then also you're choosing to be the pastor of a church and beg people for money, whether it be online or in your congregation. Like, I understand that side of things for sure. But also at the same time, I do want to acknowledge that this father did the right thing in taking this to the authorities so that, you know, hopefully Joseph will be locked up and cannot do this to another child, because there are so many parents out there that would not do this because they don't want to deal with the legal repercussions of the situation. They don't want to deal with the legal battle. They don't want to take it into a situation that makes their life harder. He did the right thing, and now they are paying for it because the Duggars are mad at them for taking it legally. And, you know, I saw people saying, well, at least Jim Bob took Josh to a police officer to talk about it. And what else are you supposed to do in that situation? Jim Bob took Josh to talk to a police officer that was not only a family friend of Jim Bob, but also was a predator himself. He took him to him because he was safe. It didn't matter what his job title was. He didn't actually take it to the authorities, because if he took it to the authorities in the appropriate manner, then appropriate repercussions would have been had in that moment. He took Josh to a family friend. Therefore, it made him feel like he was doing something about it, but he wasn't. Therefore, Josh continued to get away with it. The more this happens, the less I feel that Jim Bob is a safe person. I am disturbed by this man. I feel like he has been the cult leader of this family that started it all, if not his father. There is a lot of predatory behavior that's going on inside of these families, and keeping them so restricted and confined and scared in the manner that they've had has kept them quiet. It has kept them in an environment where they're scared to speak up. If I was Jim Bob's child, I would be scared to speak up in this house. Look what happened when Jill spoke up about the money situation. They ostracized her from the entire family. Okay? Look what happens to them when they speak out against what happened to them, whether it be in a sexual sense or whether it be in a financial abuse sense, which Jim Bob has also financially abused his children. Whatever manner it is, look what happens when they speak up. They make them suffer. Kendra, you are just as bad. How could you possibly hear what he did and be on a call with him and be like, do you still love me? What is wrong with you? I'm disturbed, you guys. I had to go on another rant about this because the more I sat with it, the more angry it made me. They took a home out from underneath the victim. In what family would they ever do something like that? They would give them housing and a place to live for $10,000 and give them comfortability. But whenever they find out how horrifically victimized a child was, they take her house away? They take her safe place away? In what world would a human being that is decent in the least bit do something like this? I cannot wrap my mind around it. In a world that would make sense, you would round around the child that was harmed to make her feel safe and comfortable as she had to go through this distressing legal situation with a predator, and make sure that she felt safe and loved during this time. You would not round around the predator unless maybe you were one. That's all I have to say in this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you soon for another one.